You, Nirad.
Yeah, so there's this new study coming out in the JBJS 2026 that when you have a heavy lunch, the blood flow gets diverted to your gut, which causes AVN. That's one of the reasons. Anyway, let's start. So in the natural history of AVN, what we are here to answer is this question, that in the stage 1 and 2 AVNs, the typical male that we encounter in our practice is the person who has an idiopathic AVN. And we all know that we try to start with the medical management, but whether we should do medical management along with surgical management, that is the question that we need to answer. And when is doing too much worse than doing too little, and vice versa, with head preservation surgery. So we know avascular necrosis is ischemic death of the cells that affects the joints, hip being the most common entity. It's also commonly known as osteonecrosis of the femoral neck. A standard third MS question answers. What are the causes? We have the traumatic and atraumatic causes. The traumatic is where there's direct vascular compromise, and in the atraumatic, there are usually multiple causes. So you have in the traumatic the fracture neck of femur, hip dislocations, iatrogenic, and in the atraumatic, the common causes are steroids, alcohol, idiopathic, and the other reasons. I found this interesting that in the ARCO classification, when they talk about steroid-induced osteonecrosis of the femoral head, they consider a steroid use of more than 2 grams of prednisone over a period within a 3-month period, with the osteonecrosis setting in within 2 years as one of the reasons which is classically described as steroid-induced osteonecrosis, and there should be no other risk factors. Similarly, for alcohol, the intake should be more than 400 ml per week for more than 6 months, and the avascular necrosis should set in within 1 year. This comes in the criteria of alcohol-induced osteonecrosis. Post-COVID also we saw a lot of osteonecrosis. There were 2 reasons for this, mainly because of the steroid intake and because of the hypocoagulable state of the COVID disease itself. Fortunately, it tends to behave as other AVNs. So when you look at the pathophysiology, you're looking at sort of a compartment syndrome within the head, especially in steroid and alcohol. There's marrow fat hyperplasia, which increases the intraosseous pressure, which then causes venous congestion and venous compromise, which then in turn leads to arterial compromise and then leading to death. And when you get this fibrovascular reparative rim, that's the stage when it becomes irreversible. So there are 2 essential stages. There's a pre-collapse stage where the biology is still evolving. That's when your size, stage, and location of the lesion matters. And the second stage, which becomes a collapse stage, when the biology gets converted into mechanical failure. So the disrupted perfusion leading to death, when it involves the weight-bearing segment, leads to subchondral fracture, which is the crescent sign, leading to collapse and secondary osteoarthritis. So the inflection point is the pre-collapse stage, where you prognosticate and decide where head preservation is justified, and when the post-collapse stage, when arthroplasty becomes the more predictable solution. We all are familiar with the Ficat and Arlet classification, where stage 2 to A is where there are focal radiological signs, and the stage 2B where the crescent sign is present, which suggests that the head is now going to collapse. Stage 3 and stage 4 are advanced stages. We also have the Mitchell classification, which is used by the radiologists based on the fat or the blood or the edema in the bone head or the fibrosis, where they classify it depending on the intensity that you see in T1 and T2. So some just pictures for you to understand the pre-collapse AVN, where you see these signals. You often get these geographic lesions, and in T1 you get the hyperintense single density, and in T2 you get a double line sign. Then as the case advances, you get a crescent sign, where you get 2 hyperintense lines in the T1 weighted image. In the pre-collapse stage with bone edema, and then the collapse stage, where it's quite easy to identify the lesion. We also have a 2019 ARCO classification, where they have where the stage 2 is an abnormal X-ray, with the MRI also being abnormal, with the stage 3 where they have an early collapse, which is less than 2 millimeters of the femoral head, and stage 3B where there's more than 2 millimeters collapse. Up to stage 3A, they tend to do well. Up beyond that, they go into this in the replacement category. They further classify depending on the extent of the lesion and on the location. So if the lesion is more in the, not in the subchondral lesion, but and more in the subchondral lesion, and more medial lesions tend to be categorized as type 1. The one which come more laterally and more towards the subchondral area are worse in prognosis. Then we have other classification systems like the Steinberg, where they've divided based on the effect, the area of the articular surface as it involved, 15 to 30 or more than 30. And the Japanese also have their own classification criteria depending on the area involved and the extent to which it extends laterally. The more lateral involvement of the head, the worse the prognosis is. Then you also have the Kerboul's criteria, which is MRI modified based on the mid-sagittal and mid-coronal sections. You have something called a combined necrotic angle, where you look at the sum of the angles on the mid-sagittal and mid-coronal, with less than 190, where there's an extremely low risk of collapse, 190 to 240, which have a moderate risk of collapse, and more than 240, where there's extremely high risk of collapse. Some bad prognosis signs also is when there's associated synovitis in the hip along with edema in the head. While the opposite, where the edema reduces, like this patient who had a core decompression done and the T1 weighted images shows less hyperintensity. That's a good sign of healing. Note the MRI has to be done after 6 months. The other important things to differentiate for in AVN are stress fractures, the bone marrow edema syndrome, or what is called transient osteoporosis of the hip, and also subchondral insufficiency fractures. So just showing you 3 examples of that. The one on the left is a stress fracture. The second one is the subchondral insufficiency fracture, which has a line which is convex, which is parallel to the articular surface, and the bone marrow edema syndrome, the transient osteoporosis of the hip, where the head looks lit up like a light bulb. So what are bad prognostic factors is the stage of the lesion, the size of the lesion, location of the lesion. If there's an ongoing pathology that the steroid and alcohol intake is going on, that's a bad prognosis. And inflammatory arthritis like SLE on steroids replacement would probably be a better option. So a pre-collapse, you stratify the risk with the stage, Kerboul's criteria, location. If low risk, if the lesion is medial, you can observe. If the lesion is high risk, you can consider head preservation options. Post-collapse, all else is now going to fail. Arthroplasty is the only predictable solution. You have to counsel the patients because these are going to be younger patients. And now I leave it to my learned colleagues to take it forward. Thank you.